On May 1st, 1998, a Dublin-based gang of dissident Republicans held up a Securicorps van just north of Ashford, County Wicklow. It was carrying £250,000 in cash. The gang were totally unaware that despite Blue Flu Day, the Gardaí were onto them.
At that stage, it was clear that they were in the act of committing an armed robbery, they were committing an offence, and the Gardaí were safe to move in.
Members of the National Surveillance Unit and the Emergency Response Unit were converging on the scene, heavily armed policemen and women, running through the traffic, roaring at the raiders.
Two of them ran to the side of the road, jumped into a hedge, tried. They were rounded up pretty quickly.
Stand up! Get your hands up! Get your hands up! Turn around! Get out of the car!
One of the gang members resisted arrest. He tried to hijack a car. A violent struggle ensued. He was arrested.
If you can imagine, we were here, there was something happening behind us, but they started actually shooting, so it was like as if there was gunshot going over our car. We actually thought we were going to be killed because we were so close to the Securicorps van. And when my boss at the time said, "Come on, let's get out of the car."
Go.
There was pandemonium, people jumping out of their cars when they saw the raid in progress, jumping into ditches, plainclothes police converging on the scene, trying to separate who was a gang member, who was an innocent motorist caught up in all this, shouting, roaring. Nobody knew what was going on.
We ran into that, I suppose it was a ditch then. We jumped into the side, but because of the gunshot, it wasn't just us running back, the raiders were running all over the place too. So the guards then, I presume, thought that they didn't know who we were, presumed that we might have been raiders or something, and then pointed the guns at us and told us to get your effing hands up, and which we did. And I have to say, that probably was the worst part of the whole thing, for me.
Wait, I want you to stay there and don't move in there, okay? Don't move in there.
Another raider jumped in the gang's car and attempted to drive south towards Ashford. He was rammed by a Garda car and arrested. The fifth member of the gang, Ronan McLaughlin, approached an elderly couple who had already attempted to turn their car away from the scene back towards Dublin. Ronan McLaughlin was shot by Gardaí. He died at the scene.
Ronan McLaughlin was a 28-year-old young man from Ballymun. He was the father of two children. At the time of his death, his partner was expecting their third child. Ronan himself had no criminal convictions. He came from a staunch Republican family. When he was a child, he was involved in the youth wing of the IRA, Na Fianna Éireann. He was on colour parties, he marched in protests. So he was a very staunch and active member of the Republican movement, even though up to that point the Gardaí weren't aware of him having been involved in subversive or illegal activity.
On the day of the Ashford raid, Gardaí said that Ronan McLaughlin had been shot after the raiders opened fire. The following day, however, the Gardaí issued a clarifying statement confirming that none of the raiders' weapons were fired during the incident.
Away to Ashford, to the scene of that shooting in Ashford in County Wicklow. Valerie Cox is there. Valerie, what have you got to tell us?
Hello, Miles. Well, as you know, it happened 2.5 miles north of Ashford on the Cullenmore Bends. Now, it's a very narrow roadway and completely tree-lined.
Well, I was a freelance at the time. I was working for RTE and mainly contributing to the 5-7 programme with Miles Dungan. I was just driving in the area because I live there, I live very close, and I just suddenly got into this long tailback of traffic. We were sitting there so long that I was really kind of wondering what was going on. I leaned into the boot and I took my Marantz with me, just in case there was something that needed to be reported on.
The area has been sealed off, but I have to say, Miles, that there's been enormous chaos. 4 cars are scattered around the roadway, and one of them has crashed into a ditch. There was a body on the road covered with a cloth. There are unconfirmed reports that he is dead.
We knew there was a Security Corps van involved. We knew there was chaos. We knew that somebody was dead. A lot of people were in shock at that stage. I remember going around and recording pieces with them. I remember one man telling me that he'd actually just crouched down on the floor of the car, and he said, I was waiting for another gunshot. You know, I was just wondering, were they going to get me?
I've spoken to a number of them. They are totally shocked and devastated at the moment. Nobody quite seemed to know what was happening.
We understand from speaking to one man who was an electrician working in Bray that he had been told by one of the gang to get out of his vehicle and to start running. He initially started running in the opposite direction, was told to no, go back the other way, and then he ran in this direction, and shortly afterwards he was mistaken by the guards as being a member of the gang and was sort of put down on the ground, had to show his ID and say, I'm not, he was quite shocked.
This is a sleepy backwater in County Wicklow. You know, it was a bank holiday. People were maybe going to the sea, coming back from the sea, going away for their weekend, and they certainly didn't expect anything like this to be happening.
I'm sure one of the guards must have said to us, you know, you can come out of the ditch now. I mean, when the guards went after the people who were running all over the place, very quickly it ended. It ended as quick as it started. I can't even say whether it was 5 minutes, 2 minutes, or 10 minutes, because it was like time had stood still at the time.
Simultaneously, 2 miles away, the man that was masterminding it by walkie-talkie and mobile phone, he was arrested at the same time. So the Gardaí were even across that aspect of the raid.
The extensive Garda presence within seconds of the raid taking place points to very accurate intelligence of the gang's movements. However, picking the right time to move in is crucial.
One of the most important considerations in an operation like this for the security forces is the timing, is to decide when to move in. People always ask in cases like this, why aren't these people, armed gangs, stopped before they start to commit the robbery, before the heat of battle? Quite simply because it's not an offence to drive down the road in convoy. It wasn't an offence to have a balaclava. It wasn't an offence to have an angle grinder, a lump hammer, a can of petrol. It's not an offence to have these items in a car, and you can always give some sort of a legitimate explanation for them. Even if a gang is caught with firearms, usually when gangs bring firearms with them to armed raids, they have them in the boot of the car or it's in the glove compartment, and when the guards stop and arrest everybody, hey, nobody knew the guns were there, nobody's responsible for them, and therefore nobody's convicted. And they have to be sure that they were committing a criminal act or a criminal offence before they moved on them. So that's why they selected the particular time when they moved in on them.
Within a few days of the attempted raid at Ashford,